Hey guys, so one of our patrons sent me a message and said that she'd read that Japan had the highest incidence of COVID in the world, so the largest number of new infections of COVID of any country in the world. What do you think of that? She said. So, yeah, I didn't know that was actually the case, but apparently it's been the case for weeks. I wrote down how many weeks. 10 weeks. For the last 10 weeks, Japan has had the highest number of new COVID cases every week for the last 10 weeks. So it's just amazing. It's just a few things to need to be talked about here. One of them is that, as we've talked about in previous videos, there's been no laws. There's been no laws that have been passed to make us do this or not do that, or there's no behavioural stuff has been enforced by law. Right from the start, the last 3 years, they've just recommended or suggested or things like that, with the exception of organisations like schools and places like that where they've had you call them rules, not laws, but rules, right? And so, oh geez, where to start with this? It usually hasn't been a law thing. It's usually been a social pressure thing, right? And the way Japanese society works is you don't need to pass a law. If you have the rule is, or the mana is, that you have to do this and you can't do that, that's what most people will do. With exceptions, we do know a couple of people who are just sick of all that and just won't do any of it anymore. They're just sick of it, and they're walking around without masks on in places where they've been asked to, and they just don't care. There are a handful of people like that, but the majority of Japanese people feel a huge pressure, including people in our family and friends and people close to us feel a massive pressure to conform and do what they're told, and so that's where most of the pressure comes from. But it's just amazing, the Loving the Mask video that I made recently, talking about how, you've got all these people driving around, one person in a car wearing a mask, and there's a lot of people here who, those guidelines say at the moment when you go shopping or when you go to the post office or the bank or places inside where there's other people, that you should wear a mask. That's the guideline, right? And you should wash your hands with alcohol, and most people are doing that. But then there's a whole heap of people, massive percentage of the population, who'll just wear a mask all the time. They'll wear it driving around. This is the Loving the Mask video I made recently. They'll just wear it walking out here in the open, or riding their bicycle out here, or in their car on their own, or, the Loving the Mask people, right? We've got those guys. And yet, we've got this highest incident rate of COVID in the world, right? So also, this is more disturbing, actually. This is more disturbing. The second highest number of fatalities in the world for COVID. So there's a possibility that it's because we also have one of the oldest populations, the oldest average populations in the world as well. Because Japanese people usually have a fairly long life expectancy, but also we have an aging population. There's not a lot of kids coming through, and there's a lot of people are aging, so we have an aging population. So the average age in Japan is quite high. It's like 50 or 60 or something like that. So it's quite high. We've got a huge percentage of the population are over 50 and over 60. So that might explain why there's more fatalities. Second highest number of fatalities for COVID in the world. So what we're getting, they don't talk about it terribly much. It's the government, the national government is sort of had enough of it, sort of thing, and they're more worried about the economy at the moment. So you don't hear a lot from them. And then when you do hear it discussed, usually they sort of make excuses. So there was a doctor we saw recently on television saying that it was because that Japan tests for COVID more, and that's why we've got the highest rate in the world, is because they test for it more here, and that's that. So we don't necessarily have the highest number of people, but we just know how many people have got it because of the amount of testing that we do. That was his point of view. Obviously, look, I'm fully aware some people hate these videos. I know that. They still click on them, right? They still watch them, but they hate them, right? They hate anything about COVID, right? And you never know. There's always different people have different opinions on all these things, including doctors, right? I mean, a lot of doctors agree on certain things, but there's other things that are contentious, right? So this guy says, you know, that's his excuse. You often hear excuses too, that, you know, people try and defend Japan by saying stuff like that too. So who knows? Another doctor suggested, that we saw on television, suggested that the reason that we're having more cases now is because we had fewer cases at the start. At the start, when lots of countries had lots and lots of cases, we didn't have so many, and that's why we have more now. Who knows? But look, I've got to tell you something that the way they've handled it, the way they've been handling it until recently, was that they had the close contact rule, right? So that if somebody got it, someone got COVID, they had to stay home for 10 days. And if you were a close contact, you had to stay home for 10 days as well, which was just this constant thing where, you know, one person in the family would get it, so the family has to stay home. And then get to almost to the end of that staying home, that quarantine period, and another member of the family would get it, so everybody had to stay home, right? And then they brought it back from being 10 days back to 7, and then recently, if one person in the family gets it, everyone has to stay home for 3 days, and at the end of the 3 days, the people who didn't catch it have to take tests, and if you test negative, then you can go outside, right? Which is one of the more stronger sets of guidelines around the world, isn't it? You know, I don't know about a lot of other countries, but I know in Australia at the moment that if you have COVID, you can still put on a mask and go to the shopping centre and buy your groceries. And if someone in the family has COVID, they have to stay home mostly, but the other family members can go about their normal life, right? But Japan's always had this strict thing where you just lose weeks and weeks of, you know, one of the kids gets it, you can't go to work. The last week or so, it's got more ridiculous, and what they've got now is, you know, this is really frustrating. They've said that we got a letter from the school that said that if anyone in the family has cold symptoms, the kids can't come to school, and everybody in the family should stay home. Now, you never know when these things come. You never know where they've come from, like how high up the chain. This is signed by the principal of the school, right? Now, is that the principal's idea? Or is it the local school district's boss's idea? Which old man, because, you know, Japan's pretty much run by old men, which old man made that decision, or which group of old men made that decision? Was it made at the school level, or the district level, school district level, or the prefecture level, or the national level? You never know, because you just get these letters from different people telling you these guidelines, right? So this has turned up in the last couple of weeks, that if anybody has a cold symptom, that they can't go to school, and the other family members should stay home too, which is just insane. Because from now until March, you know, everybody has colds. Everybody has colds. It's cold weather here. It's starting to get down now towards 0. We've got snow on the mountains. It's cold climate. People catch colds, you know. And they've always been paranoid about the germ thing with the catching colds things and the masks, and we've talked about that 10 years ago. We talked about that. But, you know, there's this now if you've got cold symptoms, you've got to stay home, and the other people in the family. How insane is that? That would basically mean if we follow that guideline, nobody's going anywhere for the next 5 months. We're just going to stay home, you know, because that's what's going to happen. There's always going to be someone in the house with a cold, right? Which is just absolutely insane. And then, you know, and again, it's not a law, but the pressure they feel. I was talking about it to my wife today, and the fear that they have that they're going to go somewhere. And because I was saying to her, go, she had plans of stuff that she had to do today, and I said, just go. No, I can't, because she's in fear that if she goes and the people there catch COVID, that it'll be because of her. And a lot of Japanese people, you know, probably the majority of Japanese people have that same fear, this huge social pressure, which is not based on logic or or science. Just because you go somewhere and someone in that group catches COVID doesn't mean it's from you. It doesn't mean that any behaviour that you did caused it, does it? Necessarily. There's no, this is the thing, and we've seen this over the last 3 years. You know, someone catches it and then the people in their family get it and then someone else gets it. So who got it first? No idea, right? Who introduced it to that family or who introduced it to that group? Usually you have no idea. So this irrational fear, and it's fully understandable because of the way Japanese society works. You know, that if there's a guideline and, oh, you know, you should do this, or and then if someone catches, oh, dame, you know, it's bad, it's no good, it's no good. And this sort of pressure that you always have. And keep in mind, before COVID, these guys were the same about influenza every year. They all run off and get their influenza shots and they all hide behind their masks and they're all sterilising themselves with alcohol and this sort of thing. Which leads me to the next thing. That's what they were doing before COVID, right? Some of you might remember, maybe 10 years ago, there was I mentioned it in a video, that there was a study done. I was maybe talking about allergies and hay fever, because Japan has really high incidence of hay fever and allergies, right? And compared to other countries. And there was a study done by a group at Tokyo University about maybe 10 years ago. And we saw, they talked about it on TV once. And this group came to the conclusion that the reason that Japanese people get hay fever and allergies more than other people around the world is because they're brought up in sterile environments where the houses are kept really, really clean and really sterile, and everything's sterilised and everything's, you know, they keep kids at home for like a few months after they're born because they don't want them to get germs, you know, and they really, everything's sterilised and super clean, and the mask wearing thing and all the rest of it, right? And Tokyo University study concluded that because of all that, the Japanese people have a weak natural immunity system, right? Now we saw that was maybe 10 years ago, well before any of this latest COVID thing. About 10 years ago, we saw it talked about once on television, and it was never mentioned again that we ever saw, right? And we've never heard it during all this COVID thing and everything else, never heard it spoken of again. Right? And it's because it goes against the status quo. We've talked about this so many times before. Anything that says maybe we're not doing it right, they don't want to hear it. You know, and that was Tokyo University are saying maybe we're not doing it right. They don't want to hear it. They want to hear stuff that supports, you know, Cool Japan, right? The TV show Cool Japan that tells you that everything about Japan is perfect, no need to change a thing, right? That's what they want to hear. That's what they want to hear. And so the last 3 years of COVID, nobody's talked about that. You know, all they do is this whole sterilising thing. Everybody stay home and hide in a room and wear a mask and cover your hands with alcohol and all that same. Let's keep doing what we've been doing forever, you know, for the last 50, 60, 80 years, however long they've been doing this sterilising thing. Let's keep doing that. And then obviously, you know, here we are, the highest COVID rate in the world, but let's keep doing that, right? Let's keep hiding from the germs. Maybe that'll work, right? And that's the thinking, is that you can hide from the germs and you can kill the germs and stop the germs, and germs are bad, and, you know, and here they are, huge rates of allergies, higher than lots of most other countries in the world, and huge rates of not asthma, what was the other one? Hay fever, kafunsho. If you cough or sneeze here before COVID, people go, oh, kafunsho. And doctors overdiagnose it, allergies and hay fever. So kids get a little cough before COVID, kid got a little cough, oh, it must be an allergy. And they wouldn't test for allergies, they'd just say it must be an allergy. And, you know, and so let's keep wearing masks and sterilising our hands and you know, hiding at home. If someone's got a sniffle, the next 4 months is just, it's really scary because I need to go to work, you know, and we all need to have lives, you know. It's been 3 years and they're just getting more crazy about it. Now, cold symptoms, the way it was before, if someone in the family had a fever or something like that, we had to sort of stay home, you know. But now, if you have cold symptoms, what's a cold symptom? A sniffy nose or a little cough, or what's a cold symptom? You know, so our family shut down today. That's what triggered this video, was that one of the kids had a sore throat. and a sniffly nose. So she had a sniffly nose because she had a sore throat because she had a sniffly nose, right? When you got a runny nose, it often causes a sore throat, doesn't it? She's got a cold. She's got a cold, right? So she's got to stay home, and her sister's got to stay home, and the wife's going to stay home, and I'm supposed to stay home too. And I managed to convince her that no, I'm not going to stay home because it's not going to stop. It's not going to change anything if I stay home today. It's not going to stop. What are we going to do? Stay home for the next 3 months because someone in the house has got a sniffle? So it's just insane. The logic or you can't do it. I mean, we had a fairly intelligent discussion this morning, but logic or reason or common sense is always overshadowed in Japan by the social pressure. The social pressure and the whatever the advice is, whatever the guidelines are, and it doesn't matter. I said to her when we got this letter, where'd that come from? Was that just the principal of the school that decided that nobody can come to school with a cold and their family should stay home? Or was it, who was it? Which group of old men came to that conclusion? It sure wasn't the group of medical experts at Tokyo University. They sure didn't recommend that. So who was the genius that said that was the solution? So theoretically, everybody in Japan should stay home for the next 3 or 4 months until they stop having sniffly noses and coughs and whatever else that they might have. So it's just insane. Interestingly, the government, because of the economic situation, the national government, don't seem to talk about COVID much anymore. They're more talking about the economy. And so the good news is for those of you who've got tickets to come to Japan and to come for a visit, nothing's been talked about with that. Since they opened the doors and let all the tourists in, they haven't questioned that again. They've just left that because, they know they need that for their economy. So that's good news for those of you who are coming here. Don't think it's going to affect that. Nobody's blamed the foreigners that are coming here on holidays yet. Probably someone has. I haven't heard it. Probably someone has, but the national government isn't making a fuss about that. They're just letting it go. But of course, if you come here, everywhere you go, there's signs on the door, please wear a mask, please wash your hands with alcohol. And because restaurants and places, you walk in with your mask on, you sit down and take your mask off straight away and start drinking and eating, right? So there's a lot of, and of course, those of you who remember the paradoxes and contradictions video, there's a lot of that going on. I mean, City Hall, here we go, the touch screen at City Hall and the pen. Sit down and fill out these forms, please. Here's a pen. Here's a COVID pen for you, right? Because the last 50 people who sat at that table today obviously used the same pen. So you get all these contradictions. You've got to wear your mask and sterilise yourself, but here's a pen that you can pass around 50 people that you don't know, so, which doesn't worry me at all, but it's just the contradiction of it. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of silliness. Small restaurants, small spaces, everyone walks in with a mask and they all sit down, all take their masks off. So, anyway, no doubt this will be a really unpopular video. Different people have different opinions. I always get people who get angry and say, you don't take it seriously enough. And then there's a bunch of other people who get really angry and say, you take it too seriously. It's a bit of a controversial subject, isn't it? The old COVID. Most of us are sick of it. Whatever side of the fence you're on, whether you think we take it too seriously or not seriously enough, pretty much everyone's had a gutful of it, huh? It's just a pain in the ass. No matter where you live in the world, it's a pain, isn't it? We're sick of it. I mean, obviously the worst thing about it is that it messes up people's lives physically when they get sick, and the people who die and all those things. That's the worst part of it. But then for the rest of us, it just messes our lives up, doesn't it? And at the moment, if you live in Japan, it's a pain. It's a real pain, It is. It's just the overreaction and the lack of logic, A lot of these videos that talk about just finished making, some of you will recognise, just finished making another video sitting right here before I made this one. And it's just a frustration sometimes, that the lack of logic here. That video is about the bureaucracy and the My Number Card thing. But sometimes it can be so frustrating, the lack of logic and reason. And it's not just the bureaucracy that's like that, it's the people. So that when you try and talk to your friends or family about how silly something is, they can't see it because they just accept it. So all these silly guidelines about COVID, they just accept it. They just, oh well, shogunai, they say. And I always say, I always think the Shogunai stuff is the guidelines that you can't, like the rules at the school. If we send the kid to school with cold symptoms, they'll probably call us and say, come pick her up. So that you can't do anything about that. But there's a lot of other stuff where we could make our own decisions, where you'll find that your Japanese friends and family here will just go, oh, dummy, we can't do that. We've got to cancel everything. We'll get a lot of that over the next couple of weeks. Everything's going to get cancelled. They're all our plans. I'll lose a lot of work every time this happens because the people I work with take this stuff really seriously, and so I'll lose a lot of work over the next few weeks, which just, don't need that. Sick of that. Just want to go to work. Some of you guys will be in the same position, no doubt, wherever you are in the world. But just so frustrating. Just want to go to work, earn my money, pay my bills. That's all I want to do, And there's always someone going, oh no, we can't do that. We've got to cancel this and we've got to cancel that because of COVID. Corona, they say. Corona, 3 years of that. And it's not working, is it? All their amazing strategies, they're not working. We've got the highest rate of corona in the world. So it's not working, but they'll still stick to their policies, their guidelines. It's just the way it is. Anyway, nice out here in the rice fields, isn't it? So this field here, it's been harvested probably a while ago, a month or so ago probably. It's been harvested, and then what you're seeing there is regrowth, so it's grown again, but it's not going to get much bigger than that because it's too cold now. So it's not going to grow another yield for them or anything like that. It'll just stay like that. So it's rice growing, but it won't actually produce grain. It'll just be like that, and then when it gets really cold, it'll probably die off and go brown, and the farmer will come along at some stage and just plough it back in, probably, so it doesn't waste his nutrients, because at the moment, that's just wasting his nutrients. That's not going to give him anything. Anyway, there was that. More videos coming soon.